So with My Hero Academia becoming such an international sensation, it was inevitable that someone would notice in Hollywood, and like many a manga property before, the rights have been scooped up by Legendary Pictures to be adapted into a live-action feature film. As of the time of this writing, there's been no word on a cast or release date, as it hangs in development hell like the forever gestating Akira movie, and for all we know it might never see the light of day. But I think it's inevitable that this will eventually make its way to the big screen and could open a larger floodgate for the Hollywood shonen manga boom. But with things in limbo, I think it's time to put on my big wig executive hat and give my pitch on how to successfully adapt My Hero into a feature film, while also breaking down the pratfalls it might stumble across in the adaptation process. So let's get into it, as we talk about the only way to do this right, through musical theater.
ヒーローはできますか?
Now previously I'd talked about My Hero becoming a huge gateway to the inevitable manga boom and getting fast-tracked after Detective Pikachu became a billion-dollar hit. For those of you who've seen that video, you can also see that I was wrong. Detective Pikachu did well, but not as well as I thought it could. Well, let's just say a little thing called Avengers Endgame sucked out all the air in the room. Marvel did a lot of things right, and one of the chief ones was keeping Endgame's plot largely a secret, and also doing something we never see in big blockbuster promotion anymore. They didn't show any of the third act action scenes in the trailers. So for once, the audience had no idea what to expect, and given the fact that the movie was over 3 hours long and getting tickets was difficult, it created a surge of interest that lasted well beyond the opening weekend, with people still struggling to see it without any major spoilers. This clobbered the competition, sucking out all the air in the room and giving Detective Pikachu a rather muted response. Detective Pikachu also has a few other issues as well. It wasn't quite as good as it needed to be, but it was good enough that it should have done better. But the mainstream crowd did not let the weebs have their time to shine because it was all about Thanos. This put a damper on my predictions for the My Hero movie. I thought it would be fast-tracked after Detective Pikachu hit it big, but it's still in development hell right along with its fellow shonen buddies, the Bleach movie and the Naruto movie. I do think it's inevitable that we'll see this movie get made, and in some ways we have a sneak preview where we can see how it might translate into live action through the My Hero Academia, the Ultra Stage, a live action stage play in the long-held tradition of Japan creating what they call 2.5D musicals in which popular anime and manga come to life in a theatrical stage show productions. And if you think it's cringy as hell, well, all I can say is that if you've ever seen The Lion King on Broadway or Shrek the Musical or any other musical based on a popular American movie, then the pot has no right to call the kettle black. It's the same thing, just in a different cultural context, and yes, I will be using clips from the My Hero Academia Ultra show throughout this, so look forward to that. In localizing it from a mainstream audience, will the setting be moved from Japan to America, and will most of the characters lose their Japanese names in the process? Localizing is a long, interesting history. For example, in Gore Verbinski's adaptation of The Ring, the entire story is transplanted from Japan to America. While a lot of its iconic imagery was reproduced, it was still recast with American actors set in an American setting. An even more famous example is the Hong Kong film Infernal Affairs, which was adapted into the Best Picture winner of The Departed. And nobody complained about that. But then that was a different era than the current one we live in, where movies like Ghost in the Shell are accused of whitewashing traditionally Asian characters, with Scarlett Johansson taking the role of Major Motoko Kusanagi. The Netflix Death Note movie seemed to mostly get away with its localization, but the movie had other bigger problems than simply changing Light Yagami into Light Turner. So what do you do when most of your main cast all have Japanese names and live in Japan in the 2019-2020 era? There's also another issue that moving the setting away from Japan to America brings. The central pillar of My Hero Academia revolves around All Might, and what makes him unique is how unabashedly American he is to an almost ridiculous degree. He almost borders on parody, and it's through All Might that we really get the fusion of Eastern and Western tropes. All Might is the distilled jingoistic patriotism of Captain America and Superman all rolled into one, and all of his signature smash attacks are named after different states. But it's an important element in terms of using the superhero tropes as a way to introduce the audience to the shonen manga elements, and largely make him more palatable by presenting them through the lens of a superhero story, rather than something like a Dragon Ball Z battle with its planet-crushing bouts, or even a Naruto ninja fight barred down with all of its complicated jutsu jargon. But All Might in America does feel kind of redundant, and less like a warm homage to American comics if he's, well, in America. He just becomes kind of a joke. Putting him in America just makes him feel stupid and lame. So I think there are a few ways to get around this, and easiest one would be to set UA as an international school that takes in aspiring heroes from around the globe. I also think that it shouldn't be a high school, but rather a college, because think about it. If the series is successful and the movies go on for years and years, adapting the numerous arcs from the manga, do you really want to see a bunch of 20 or 30-somethings pretending to be high schoolers over the course of a decade? Not everyone can have the eternally boyish face of Tom Holland. So I think if you have UA be a college instead of high school, you build something where it won't feel like the cast will easily outgrow it after 1 or 2 movies. Also, having the movie have an international school that takes in people from around the world can let you do a grab bag of casting, where all the students of Class 1A can feature a bunch of different nationalities. That way no one can really complain about Midoriya being a white guy, if at least Shoto is Japanese and maybe the Frog Girl is Indian or something else. You get the idea. It worked wonders for the Spider-Man home movies, with Peter Parker being surrounded by an ethnically diverse cast that reflected the reality of modern New York City, and a similar approach will deflect people complaining about whitewashing a bunch of Japanese characters if instead they're a bunch of kids from around the world at an international superhero college. The other important thing is that outside of All Might, everyone else should be cast by unknowns. Because let's face it, you gotta mitigate your risk as much as possible. The franchise name is what will get butts into seats from the fans. The normie audience will be attracted to whoever you can cast as All Might, which will be a big promotional draw, but spending a lot of money on name brand talent is a waste of money, and My Hero live action will still be a huge risk to whoever fronts the bill, and the key to success will be creating a relatively modest budgeted $40 to $60 million movie that doesn't cost too much, and has a much lower margin of error in terms of how much it costs to recoup from the box office. Movies in this budget range are a lot less common, but what most of the early arcs in My Hero Academia are kind of small scale, and in the hands of a skilled filmmaker shouldn't require the massive budget needed for a $150 or $200 million tentpole feature film. So you've got unknown actors and the actresses playing the kids of UA. Real question is, who's the main draw of being All Might? What would be especially fun, although not sure if this would ever happen, would be getting 2 actors, one to play the real skinny form of All Might, and another to play the muscled form. Of course you could use one person with special effects, but I think it'd be fun to get someone big like The Rock, John Cena, or Dave Bautista, or some other WWE wrestler, bristling with charisma, who could work as a promotional vehicle to sell people on the movie, but then using someone less famous to do the heavy dramatic lifting in terms of playing All Might's real form. This would never happen, but just imagine if The Rock is the muscle form, but then when time runs out, he transforms into his real form, which is Steve Buscemi. Even better would be if you could hide it in the promotional materials so that the mainstream audience is super surprised when they get the reveal about his true nature to recreate the thrill anime and manga fans had at seeing All Might's true form for the first time. Plus, it also means less time for Rock or John Cena or whoever to be on screen, so you can get them to be involved without paying some exorbitant amount of money. Now the question is, what material should the first hypothetical movie cover? And I think it's a pretty simple answer. There's a very compact introductory arc, and that's about everything in the first 21 chapters of the series, leading up to the joint training simulator arc. It breaks down perfectly into a nice 3-act structure. You have Act 1 with the intro into All Might and Midoriya inheriting One for All, then at the end of Act 1 moving ahead to the UA admission exam. Act 2 is the school shenanigans of the big centerpiece action scene with the battle trial with Deku fighting against Bakugo with his hero costume on. Then you have a nice huge action set piece with the USJ arc where Shigaraki and the League of Villains make their debut, and all climaxes with the All Might vs. Nomu fight. You'll have to trim some stuff out, but you can get all of the material into a very nice 2-hour movie that will most importantly not cost a huge amount of money to make. And assuming the movie performs well, which it will, given the current marketplace and the huge international fan base for My Hero Academia, it will probably make a fair amount of money. But honestly, all you need is a good orchestral rendition of You Say Run and The Rock screaming plus ultra, and I think you'll keep most people happy. Then if it does do well, then you have so much material to mine. You can pump these out for like every 2 years or so. It can go on forever. Because the current franchise paradigm has shifted. Originally, the traditional Hollywood sequel is all about basically repeating the same story beats as the first one to diminishing returns. Die Hard in a building became Die Hard in an airport, Die Hard in New York, Die Hard in DC, just repeating the same thing again and again and again until you milked as much money as you could. But the early 2000s, with the release of both Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, created a new franchise environment where audiences demanded long-form serialized storytelling in their movies, which was expanded even further with the MCU, and that is what makes so many shonen manga series perfect fodder to become big screen franchises. They're all long-running stories with lots of material to adapt, so they can literally go on forever. But so far, no one has figured out the code to making it palatable to a mainstream audience. That's the missing part of the equation. How to transform Kamehameha waves or Razagans into something your mom and uncle can talk about, like Infinity Stones or Thanos. My Hero is the best bet of pulling it off because everyone is familiar with the idea of the superheroes, and 2 decades of X-Men movies has prepared everyone to get the concept of quirks, and the idea of a universe where everyone is a superpower, they don't spend 2 hours angsting about it as a metaphor for being oppressed or gay, is something that would come across as fresh and new. All you need is one successful movie, and that will light the spark that will ignite into a million others. And My Hero is far easier to adapt than many other manga, so who knows? Maybe someone will take my suggestions, and 5 years from now we'll see Steve Buscemi struggle against All for One as the Hideout Raid arc hits the big screen. But those are my thoughts on how you can make My Hero Academia into something that's successfully localized. Let me know what you think, which ideas you liked, which ones you hated, and what are your ideas for the inevitable live-action movie might look like. Hope you enjoyed that video, and with that we bring My Hero Month to a close. Those are all the most pressing things I had to say on the series as of right now. Hope you enjoyed this latest batch of My Hero Academia content. Unless you want me to make one of those lazy listicle explainer videos where I just read a bunch of stuff from fandom Wikipedia pages talking about the incredible powers of Tail Guy or Invisible Girl. But I like to think you guys come here because we don't do that kind of stuff. But of course, Season 4 is far from over, and we still got the great Bakugo Explosion King and Shigaraki Successor shirts. So be sure to use the code MHM2019 to get 10% off either or both of those shirts at checkout. Go get them so you can walk around and not feel embarrassed like some other people. Oh my god, Carl, why can't you wear regular clothes?
You told me to put something else on.
Like a shirt, Carl. I just wanted you to put on a regular t-shirt.
This is a shirt.
Why does that anime girl look like she's being aroused by pizza? That's not normal.
Because pizza's very arousing.
Damn it, Carl! Why can't you be normal? Screw it, I'm eating Applebee's 2 for $20 by myself. Get the Explosion King or the Successor shirt, or be a real king and get them both. Hell, for the price of one Michael B. Jordan Coach Naruto shirt, you can get almost like 4 of them if you like. So don't forget to use the code and get the shirt, and the code won't last forever. You have until the end of November, so get yours now and use the code MHN2019 for 10% off. See you around next year in 2020 or 2021, whenever Season 5 of My Hero Academia premieres. And remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.